Let's do it. Let's do it.
Welcome to Isles of Kentucky. I'm Forrest Day, your host for the show. Today I've got my man Frank Jenkins here. He has represented me before, and he's going to give you some valuable lessons on what to do and what not to do in auto accidents and dealing with workers' comp. So, first, let's start out with where did you grow up, Frank?
Thanks for having me on, Forrest. I was born in St. Louis, but been in Kentucky since I was two. Lived here all my life. Went to Center College for undergrad, and then went to UK Law School
Okay.
way back and graduated in 1990. So I've had a
Okay.
few years of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got four kids. I know that. Want to tell me about where they are? And
Got four great kids, 18 to 23. We didn't mess around. And they're all doing great. The youngest is in Napa in culinary school,
okay,
and everybody else is in school or just graduated and doing great.
good deal. So I always like to ask a few things about what you enjoy. What's your favorite band?
Rolling Stones.
Rolling Stones.
Anybody who knows me knows that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite Stones album? If you could name
Exile.
one.
Exile on
Exile.
Main Street. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't get into the Stones till I had no older brothers and sisters, so it was some girls, but loved it, loved it. So I had to kind of actually go like backwards. So I want to start out because I can tell you from experience, I've had at least three accidents in this town where the person had no insurance. And believe me, it was a total nightmare. And the first time that it happened, my car was totaled and I had to deal with their insurance company and they literally just refused to pay. So I had to hire an attorney and it took like 3 years to just get back what I had lost in it because it was their fault and they rear-ended me. But it was just a complete nightmare, just literally having no car because, having liability only. So
Right. Right.
so I guess what we can start with, let's start like right at the beginning about coverage. I assume you are anti-liability only from our conversations before. I might be incorrect on that.
No, we are generally of a mind on that because the only time that it makes good sense not to carry full coverage, which includes collision, which pays for your car if it was damaged, is if you have an old beater.
Hmm.
If you've got a 10, 15 plus year old car that's really going to blue book at just a couple of $1,000s,
Hmm.
doesn't make much sense to carry uh, the collision coverage. But other than that, it's not that expensive, and it always makes sense because, like you say, you get in that situation, your car is totaled or badly damaged, and uh, you just have nowhere to go. One,
Hmm.
what you mentioned, uninsured drivers. That's a big thing. I've had so many conversations with people who hire me, and I say, well, we investigated it, and the person who hit you has no insurance. And inevitably, people are like, in Kentucky, you're required to have auto insurance. And I'm like, yes, just like a lot of other things. Uh, Not everybody follows that. They
No,
will,
no.
in order to get registration for your car, you have to show insurance, but people will purchase a policy, get street legal,
Hmm.
and then just stop paying it. And then they keep on driving, they hit you, they've got nothing.
Yeah.
And so you better have a good policy.
Yeah, absolutely. At least my home state of Louisiana, you have to roll your car in once a year and get an inspection, and then they make sure you have insurance. And same thing in Hawaii when I was stationed there. And I think when I got my daughter's car inspected, I believe you had to show insurance. I'm not sure, but at least you had to get your vehicle inspected for safety. So kind of in Kentucky,
That would
we've let it go.
that would be annoying to have to do that every year, but
Yeah.
it sure would keep a lot more people insured because just based upon my experience, I think probably at any given time in Kentucky, you're looking at 25% of the people out there on the road, no insurance.
And they all hit me. So odds are they may not hit you. But so I know when you're signing up for insurance and they're blah, 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 do you want 30,000, 40,000, this or that, body, or I don't know. It's just, it's so confusing. But like, you know, the questions they ask. So like bodily harm, I don't know. So like, what's the minimum if you fall into that category of where you do need full coverage? What kind of like minimums or whatever would you suggest keeping?
Good question. The I actually wrote. I went through this conversation so many times that I actually wrote a little book that
Hmm.
if anybody wants one,
Yeah.
you can contact
Hmm.
me and I'll send you one free. And it just sets out the basics of Kentucky auto insurance.
Hmm.
Not the most exciting topic, but it covers what you need and it shows you. You know, there's a number of things that you could add for just a couple more dollars a
Yeah.
month
Hmm.
that are really going to protect you. And so like we said, most often you need full coverage, which includes collision, which pays for your car to be repaired, which will get you back on the road. I also suggest that people get rental coverage. It's not
Okay.
expensive, but it will pay for a rental car for however many weeks while
Hmm.
your car is getting repaired.
Yeah.
The you hear on the advertisements, we keep you legal for less,
Hmm.
and that is in Kentucky the minimum uh, required by law is a $25,000 liability policy.
Okay.
If you hit someone, you have $25,000 to pay for their damages, and that's the cheapest one you can get. I don't recommend it if you can possibly afford more. Uh, uh, Another thing that you can do that people don't know about is in Kentucky they have what's called PIP. It's no fault insurance,
Okay.
and your carrier pays for the first $10,000 of damages, no fault, uh, and uh, that covers any medical bills, expenses that come up.
Hmm.
Um, for just a few dollars more a month, you can get what they call added reparations benefits. You can get $30,000 more on top of that 10. And so if you get in a wreck, somebody caused your wreck, has no insurance, that added ARB, uh, for example, would give you $40,000 to cover medical bills, related expenses. And that can really be important
Yes.
because they pay dollar for dollar and they don't really typically question that. So I recommend that. Um, I recommend that people get at least $100,000 in liability coverage as
Okay.
opposed to the 25 minimum.
Okay.
Um, uh, and what other aspect of it? Uh, the Really any of the companies, some are better than others as far as dealing with you and working with you and paying what
Hmm.
they're supposed to
Yes.
pay.
Yes.
I won't go into names, but
Yeah.
everybody, the higher end companies like State Farm and
Hmm.
Nationwide, as opposed to like the General and
Yes. Yeah.
Geico and
Johnny Lipschitz Incorporated
those.
out of the Dominican Republic,
Yeah,
Elfis, Dominican Republic. But yeah.
they spend all their money on Shaquille O'Neal,
Yes.
and don't pay out when they're supposed to.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to give you all some safety tips before we go into like what to and what not to say in a wreck. Please, if your car breaks down and you are parked in the emergency lane, or you're in an auto accident where your car is in the flow of traffic, get away from your car, because I can't tell you how many people have been killed or injured sitting in their car waiting for the police to show up. So please get off the road, put your flashers on, maybe get your insurance and registration card out, but get out of your vehicle and wait in a safe place and encourage the other person in the other vehicle.
That's great advice. And also, the police officially recommend that if you've had kind of a fender bender
Mhm.
and not serious damage, and it doesn't appear that anyone is seriously injured, move your car to safe.
Yes,
People think
yes,
if I've had a
absolutely.
fender bender, I need to leave it there in
Yeah,
the middle of some big intersection.
yeah,
Don't do that,
no,
because again, causes injuries and follow up wrecks. Um, but get it to safety, get yourself to safety,
yes,
um, and when the police really before the police get there, uh, you go and if you're okay, you go and check on the other driver. Sometimes the inclination is if it was your fault,
hmm,
is to say I am so sorry to do that, which that's natural to.
hmm,
It's better to really just say nothing.
yes,
Don't admit to anything. Just don't say anything. Ask them how they're doing. Are you okay?
yeah,
Let's get to safety, uh, and wait for the police officer to get there. But don't admit to anything. Um, it will shake out later on as to whose fault it was, and etc.
yeah. And definitely, I learned this after the fact. Uh, a lot of times, you traffic investigation cops will show up, and they'll collect the insurance card, like Frank was alluding to earlier. Forrest Day's got insurance, USAA. You know, Joe Smith's got State Farm insurance, expires 6 months from now. Well, if they're not paying their monthly bill, that's what I don't like about insurance card. It gives you the false assumption at the wreck that they have insurance. And I did not know this, but the traffic cop actually can go ahead and find out for you at the scene of the accident if their insurance is valid or not in their database. But they're probably not going to do it because they don't want to start a confrontation there. They just want to take a report and get out of there. So,
A
but
lot of in talking to police officers, a lot of them will when they're on that assignment,
mhm,
they'll have 3 or 4 wrecks to clear in a shift.
yes,
Like you say, they're wanting to get it written up, make sure everybody's okay, move on to the next wreck.
yeah. You had another point you wanted to make about uh, auto accidents and after the fact.
Yes, one thing that you'll find is that when you get in a wreck, you're going to get advice from out of the woodwork, friends and family, which is almost always wrong, but that doesn't stop people from advising you. One of the things that people tell accident victims is there's no hurry, there's no rush. If you end up needing a lawyer, there's plenty of time for that. Uh, you don't need to call a lawyer, and that can be a real problem because in Kentucky you have 2 years from the date of the wreck to file a lawsuit. So it's a lot of time, but if you don't hire a lawyer, life intervenes,
Hmm.
and you can forget. Another reason why, if you're injured, if it's a significant wreck, why it's a good idea to call a lawyer early is that there's just a lot of ways that you can mess up your case uh, if you don't have anybody advising you. For example, you mentioned earlier about giving a statement to the insurance company for the other side. They will contact you and tell you basically that you have to do this.
Hmm.
And you do not have to talk to them, and you should not. Do not give a statement to the other insurance company. Uh, Talk to a lawyer, and let them handle it, and they will basically take it over and deal with the insurance companies. And that's a that uh, it's an important thing because if you say something wrong in a
Yeah.
statement, you can destroy a case that comes up later after you've recovered from your injuries. So
Yeah, and
that's an
even
important point.
yeah, and even assume that if the other person in the wreck calls you up and they're acting all friendly or whatever, just assume you're being recorded and just politely, say, uh,
Talk to my
I don't
lawyer.
talk to my lawyer or don't talk about it, and that's about it. So I want to talk about, and sadly, I've had experience with that workers' comp.
That's how we know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, for what you were saying, Kentucky is about one of the worst states to get injured in. But can you kind of tell us, like, if you're injured, uh, where how does all that process work? And then one thing I want to add there is you don't want to tell your employer you kind of did it gradually. You need a date and a time, and it was right then, or they'll say you didn't do it
Right.
at work. So
Um,
please take over.
Absolutely. The one important thing is that if you're injured on the job, you need to report it to your boss immediately.
Mhm.
So it starts the paper trail. Um, that's very important. Now, I understand that where the rubber hits the road, when you're actually out there in a working environment, especially if you work at a factory or a physically demanding job, you don't want to go complain to the boss every time you break a fingernail. And so there's this reluctance to do it, and I totally understand. But if there's a significant injury, you've got to let them know and make sure that they've recorded it, to where that later on they'll just deny that it happened. It can, companies they understandably they don't want to spend any more than they have to on workers' comp injuries, but um, you know the law requires them to pay for certain things, and reporting it early is important in getting that done. Um, so that's a big one. Um, the Another one is if you're hurt, you need to treat. They'll get hurt and they'll just sort of take a handful of Advil and hunker down and try to get better. I understand. I've been there, but you need to treat. Start that paper trail, to where if it comes down to you are going to make a claim. Um, it's all recorded, and you could prove your case.
Mhm. So even I, I don't necessarily want to say jump the gun on, every time you're hurt, call a lawyer, at work. But I mean, as long as if it's basically like a sprained ankle, you don't need to call a lawyer. It heals up, get it treated, documented. So where does it start to go south on injuries, typically with a company? When they know you're really hurt, they clamp down, or
The various things that they'll do. Some companies are good about uh, following the law, and some are not. They will they will try to blame it on, like you touched on, some kind of a pre-existing condition.
Mhm.
If you've had back problems in the past and you get a work injury, they're going to try to blame it on your past treatment.
Mhm.
If you were actively treating, say, for a back problem and you get a back injury at work, you're gonna need to prove that you had that injury at work,
Mhm.
or they will blame it on the pre-existing condition and not pay you. Um, so
So what about if you are out on workers' comp, um, and you're off work? What are the do's and don'ts about that?
the if you're injured at work and you to the point where you can't work, um, you need a doctor note saying that,
Yeah.
and they will pay you what's called temporary total disability benefits. It's 2/3 of your wage while you're off. And while you're off, you need to follow doctor's orders. Obviously, don't be doing a bunch of activities that are outside of your restrictions.
Mhm.
A lot of times, insurance companies will hire private investigators to come out and do surveillance on you.
Yes.
It happens.
Yes.
We'll have clients call up and say there is a black Chevy van parked down the block that's been there for 3 days, and I'm
Hmm.
like, well, just go up and introduce yourself.
Yes.
But they do that. That sounds a little like something out of a movie, but they'll definitely do that. And if you're out picking up cinder blocks,
Yes.
that because they're,
Yeah.
like anything else, there's fraud.
Hmm.
And but in my experience, the vast majority of people are just trying to work and
Hmm.
support their family, and they're on the up and up. But you need to do that. Um, if any new symptoms come up, you need to let your doctor know, because if they don't record it in your records, it doesn't exist. And the insurance company will say, well, you never complained about it. And if the doctor doesn't record it, who knows that you did complain about it?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So give everything you possibly can, even if you think it's the insignificant, it can be very significant.
yes,
And so how do people get a hold of you? Do you have a, I guess, website? What's your phone number down at your office where people can get in touch with you?
have a website. It's frankjenkinslaw.com.
Okay.
Uh, my office number is 859-389-9344. You can just call. We'll talk to you about it. Take your information, and just advise you on if I think if it's something that you're not going to need a lawyer for, I'll tell you that.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes we'll sign somebody up, they'll hire us, and we just monitor their treatment. Wait until they reach what they call maximum medical improvement, which is just as good as you're going to get. Whether you reach totally back to where you were
Hmm.
or not quite. Uh, and uh, and so the lawyer will monitor that. And on occasion, a person gets completely better. They return to work, and it's great. And I'll just close the file.
Hmm.
Uh, but it's good to have a lawyer to advise you along the way.
Absolutely.
And then just like other injury type cases, the attorney fee is a percentage of what you end up getting
Hmm.
for a partial or a full disability.
Okay.
So you don't owe anything up front.
Okay, that's the biggie.
They don't bill you hourly. People are like, oh, I can't talk to my lawyer because I'll get a $50 bill for a 2-minute
Yeah,
conversation. Everybody,
absolutely.
and that is the case in some
Yes.
areas of law, but injury law, it's all contingency. So if you make a money recovery, the lawyer gets a chunk of that. In workers' comp, it's a formula, but it's basically 20%.
Okay.
So it's not too bad.
Okay.
Typically, motor vehicle wreck cases are typically a third,
Hmm.
because you've got more risk as a lawyer, because you're putting in your time and cash out of pocket, and then if it doesn't end up paying anything, you don't get anything as the lawyer.
Hmm.
And that's the reason why, a third is a substantial chunk. I
Yes.
understand if people don't want to pay that.
Yeah.
I understand. If they feel like, well, I could have done this on my own,
No way.
it's not a good idea. Uh, but yeah, we'll talk to you about it and just kind of tell you the ins and outs, and you can decide whether you feel like you need to hire a lawyer or not.
A good deal. Well, I want to thank Frank Jenkins for coming in today, and please call him or somebody if you are involved in an auto accident or a workers' comp case, and get some guidance, because your friends and family, as you said, yeah, don't trust them. They're bad. Love them, but don't trust them. They don't
That's
know what the hell they're
right.
talking about.
Everybody wants to be the authority, and people will tell you
Yeah.
stuff
Back in
that's just not
1930, in
true.
my time, it was this and that. But anyway, thank you for listening in for the show, Isles of Kentucky. Again, I'm the host. My name is Forrest Day, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Boom.